looking forward to answering your questions today about UX research. And Sid, I can see that you have the first question. Would you like to vocalize it?
Yeah, thanks for that. And I feel a bit bad because I know this is upcoming research. So I know we don't have the answer yet, but maybe you have a hunch, or maybe other people in the call have an idea. But regarding CI adoption, it's super crucial to GitLab. Like most people use GitLab for source code management, and the next step is using it for CI. So I'm glad we're doing the research. But what do you think can improve it? And specifically, do we think runners as a service for self-managed will help? And it means that people no longer have to kind of manage their own runners. They can just swipe a credit card and we deliver that.
Yeah, Sid, so this is some of the research that I'll be undertaking over the next few months, I think, because it's such a big project. But that's one of the things that Juan and Darren and I have been talking about with the runner team as well, trying to dive into what do people think about that concept? Is that something that they're looking forward to having? And if it is, how would they like to execute that? Like you say, get their credit card out and just pay for it and run, do their work. So that's definitely something that we want to look into as part of this CI adoption journey, for sure.
Thanks.
Since I don't see any other questions up, I'll jump in and say, hey, we've got a new director of UX research, Adam. Adam, I'd love to hear you talk about quickly what you have seen so far in the three and a half, almost 4 weeks that you've been with GitLab, some of the opportunities that you see coming up for your team.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. So I think the main thing that stands out that I've seen so far is a lot of documentation in the handbook, which is excellent. Looking forward, some of the things that I've been hearing about and actually seeing firsthand a little bit is around scaling. And what I mean by that is scaling the research team across to other disciplines like PM and also to design. So there's certainly some opportunities there to expand some of the great training that we've done already, and to focus a little bit more on ramping up some of those research skills for the non-researchers. So that's pretty much the big thing I've seen so far, Christy.
All right, I'll ask another one. This one is of particular interest to me, to-dos and notifications. It's been a little bit of a pet peeve of mine since I joined. I've griped about it. So it looks like we have some research coming up on to-dos and notifications. Any insight into like what do we already know and what we might be exploring here?
Yeah, I can take that. So just to it's interesting. So in terms of the research that has already been conducted, what we learned there was quite a lot around how people are looking to manage and prioritize and kind of conceptualize to-dos. And so what I found to be the main problem coming out of that was that we're kind of giving people different ways to interpret the feature. So some people can interpret it as something they should actively manage. You know, I should actively add a to-do to everything I want to work on, or something I need to come back to. But other people might see just a stream of everything they're tagged in or new events kind of coming in and think, okay, it's a little bit, maybe it's more passive on my side. So people are having to kind of consistently go back to that list and see what's there, kind of prune it and understand what's actually in there for them, And so what I'm seeing is duplication across notifications, the activity feed, and to-dos. So I think the main opportunity is kind of clarifying the main intention of the to-dos feature. I think that would help people a lot. And also making it easier to, we do have filters currently, but making those filters either more discoverable or making it so that people have to rely less on those filters. So giving them a bit more control over what's showing up in their to-do list. So that was like the main things we were learning from the past study. I know right now, Manage is running some solution validation, which is around to-do analytics. So that's kind of one branch of where to-dos is going. I don't think Plan right now has the capacity to kind of pick up, work on to-dos and iterate, but that is an area that I hope the past research can feed into.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, you have a comment, I think?
Yes, I'll voice it out loud. In the issue that you linked to, it says that GitLab needs to find, under the insights, GitLab needs to find a balance between the purpose of the activity feed, notifications, and to-dos. And I was wondering, what is the next step? Is there a research initiative to look into that?
So there isn't a research initiative planned currently. I think it's an important area, but it's an area that hasn't been prioritized yet in terms of kind of what our product teams are working on. But I think the next step would be to kind of choose an area of to-dos that we want to focus on improving first, maybe low-hanging fruit. And then if there's additional research needed in order to drive that forward, then plan a research initiative.
Makes sense.
How can we link the goals of the UX research team more than to usage of the different features in the product? Right now, I feel that, well, actually, when you look at the list, a lot of the upcoming research is focused on existing features, which is great. I think a lot of the research is also driven by product managers who are working on new features and weren't very focused on usage of the product so far. I think the most important thing is to make sure the product managers focus more on usage of the things that they make. But is there something we can do in research to help with that as well?
I'll jump in here since no one else has. Yeah, I think it's a really good observation, Sid. I think this goes back to the same thing we talked about in yesterday's UX group conversation is we need to do a better job of surfacing metrics around the balance of new versus refinement work, which we are not doing a good job of, but it looks like we're getting some traction there in collaboration with quality. I'm going to dig in more to that. I think the problem is that we don't have a good view of like, what is the balance of work that we're doing? I mean, I think if we can start to see numbers around that, that will help us start to realize, oh, like we have a problem here. I have seen us doing more of that work. We've got Lori's doing an effort around merge request usability research right now. So we've done a bunch of low-hanging fruit work as part of the OKR, but coming out of that, we don't want it to stop, right? So yeah, we've done some work, but we need to do more, and this research will help to inform that. So it's starting to happen, but I mean, I agree with you. We need to be doing more. And we need to be influencing the PMs. So we can, yes, we need to be taking requests from them, but we also need to be looking ourselves and saying, okay, and what do we think we need to learn more about, and pushing that to them.
So I can add too, by coincidence, yesterday, Scott and I talked about how we can use more of our plan and portfolio management feature sets in our own process. And part of it came from, engineers want more visibility into other teams' backlogs so they can make requests that benefit their own work. And I think Scott got back to me in Slack last night. I haven't read it yet, but it looks like the PM, Justin, is already doing a lot and has a roadmap to do more of that adoption. And so I think if we do that, it'll provide you that visibility and better insight into prioritization and things like that.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Chris. See, under point 6, I put our adoption journey, and right now that's maintained by product. Product came up with it. I think it's beautifully simple. We're as long as we don't have data to spoil the story, we'll keep it simple. But we don't have data to spoil the story because we don't actually know that well what the adoption journey is. Right now, it's a bunch of hunches. I think very good hunches. I'm very glad that Scott made this. But I love to see us do more adoption research, especially in the beginning, because basically every hop you make, you lose 90% of your audience. So those early hops are important, and it's very encouraging that the CI adoption journey is on the roadmap. I wonder whether there's more there, especially as we start to kind of have more in-product reminders to people to go to the next stage.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think the growth team is thinking about this, but let me dig into that. Let me learn more, see what we're up to there.
I can speak to that a little bit.
Oh, cool.
We do have a, pardon me, a growth effort to understand the adoption journey for self-managed new users. And that's something I've been working on. I was actually on an interview call literally right before this call, talking with a new user of self-managed. It has been slow going. Unfortunately, trial users as a participant group for recruiting purposes are not the easiest to get. And so recruiting has been a challenge, but we have learned some things, and we've been sort of diversifying our research methods to try to recruit people in different ways or using different mediums to hopefully boost our recruitment. And we're ongoing. I'm hopeful that we can probably wrap it up and start getting into some sort of deliverable probably in July. But yeah, we have learned some things around the adoption journey for self-managed, both at the high level in terms of buyer decisions and how people are thinking about that and evaluating GitLab as a tool, but also then more actionable feedback of just getting GitLab up and running and some of the common issues people are experiencing, getting self-managed running, and some of the use cases that they have. And where they run into problems, and maybe where we don't do as good a job as we could do in terms of providing sufficient support or documentation for some of those common issues that people are experiencing. So I can throw a link to, we have an epic for it in the conversation agenda.
Great, and also feel free to take this time to summarize it. It's not a busy call anyway.
I don't think we're quite to the point where we can summarize it, and I don't want to necessarily try to summarize on the fly something as complex as the adoption journey. I think what we're thinking about it as, and how Gila has kind of asked us to frame it, is as a series of decision points, and trying to think about where those decision points start to kind of splinter off, and where we lose people in various phases of that. And then also, what people are coming to us in terms of requirements or assumptions, and what makes them try GitLab initially, and where we sit in that competitive landscape, and how we can address those things better, both in product, but also in messaging and communication that may sit outside of product as well.
Thanks.
I'm really interested in first look, and I know we've gone through highs and lows with having a consistent base of users who are willing to participate in research. It seems like we're back up on an upward swing, but I noticed specifically one of the slides talks about diversifying first look. Can someone talk about, like, what was the problem? What was the problem we were trying to solve, and then what are the benefits that we get out of this diversification?
Yeah, so I can speak to this. I think a product manager opened an issue requesting that we have some kind of process in place to recruit as diverse a user pool as possible for studies. I think there's a concern that users are overwhelmingly male, and the panel is certainly not a reflection of society. It may or may not be a reflection of our broader user base. But so we talked about it, and Rupert actually did a ton of work sort of crowdsourcing exposure to First Look. He reached out to people in People Ops and our ERGs and asked for people to share in various Slack communities. And in about a week, we saw around 60 signups, and we don't capture demographic information in First Look, but this is hopefully an ongoing pipeline so that First Look can be a little more representative. And the benefit of that is to have as many perspectives as possible from our users.
Is there a reason why we don't capture demographic information?
I think at the beginning, when it was set up, the goal was just to make it as quick and minimal as possible to get people to sign up without wandering off, but we could definitely add that if we wanted to going forward.
Cool. And then when I saw diversifying First Look, I wasn't exactly sure what that meant. So this was very helpful. Now I understand what that meant. You meant like cultural diversity. What about diversifying in terms of user types? So tenure, tier.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And one of the things on my backlog is to create a more thorough report on who exactly is in First Look across all those different categories you mentioned. I think we know just anecdotally from using the panel, we have a ton of people who use GitLab for source code management and CI, and a lot of developers and DevOps engineers. We are lacking security professionals and a lot of users that we expect to be availing themselves of our relatively newer product categories. So we definitely have some work to do there as well.
Thank you.
Do we have any further questions today? If not, I think we can end the call and you can have some time back. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.